LinkedIn News.
We don't do those kind of check-ins for ourselves and our minds around, well, how do I feel today? What's one word to describe how my mind feels? And if it feels anxious, and well, where do you feel that in your body? And so what's fueling that? I mean, this takes minutes, sometimes less than a minute. But those emotions are coming into the day with us, whether we like it or not. And at least if we can just slow down and check in, then we can start to understand, okay, well, I'm seeing some patterns here.
That's mental fitness expert Marc Champagne. I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better. Stay tuned for more on how to spot a gap in your mental fitness and why it's so important to take a break, even from work you love. Make sure you hit that follow button to get new episodes of our show every week. And if you're a regular listener, thank you. And consider leaving us a review so we can keep bringing you more of the kinds of conversations you love. Hey everyone, from LinkedIn News, I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better, a personal development podcast where every week I sit down with some of the world's brightest minds and bravest hearts who use science and story to share strategies for how we can flourish individually, in relationship to others, and to the world around us. As you know, this show and my work isn't just about understanding what it means to live well in every aspect of our lives. It's also about putting action behind the sometimes challenging and subtle, but also incredibly rewarding work of personal development. In the last 5 years, I've jumped into this work head first. Learning about the science behind human behavior and sharing the most meaningful findings with you has become like oxygen to me. I mean, in the last 5 years, I've filled my weekends, my alone time, my thinking time, my reading time, and probably even friend time, sorry friends, with this work. And I almost always use myself as the experiment. But earlier this year, I noticed a change in myself. I was doing what I always do. I was reading the books, listening to the podcasts, doing the practices, but it wasn't sticking. I realized I'd reached capacity, and all of my experiments, though ironically geared towards growth and improvement, weren't making me better. They were actually driving me a little nuts. And I realized this wasn't just a me problem. In our work-obsessed cultures, we can go overboard with needing to learn and grow in every moment, constantly telling our teams and leaders what we tried and how we got better as a result. It's another way of feeling productive and maybe even like we matter. After coming to this realization, I reached out to a friend and fellow expert in the mental fitness space, Marc Champagne. I was curious if he's experienced this kind of burnout himself, and spoiler alert, he has. So we agreed to have an honest conversation about how to know when to lean into inner work and when it's time to press pause on it. Marc and I dove into how self-awareness is the best barometer for moving toward or away from personal development work, how to pace yourself as the work is never done, and what a middle ground for being committed to growth without letting it consume you can look like. Here's Marc.
I see mental fitness as the umbrella term that includes really everything that we do to train our minds to work for us instead of against us. So then that includes mental health, mental performance, mental resiliency, and optimization, and so forth. And it feels, from the individuals I work with and teams I work with, it feels more empowering because we can all relate to physical fitness for the most part, right? And the example I often use is, if you don't like to run, it doesn't rule out all of exercise, right? There's a million different things you can do, right? So same thing when it comes to mental fitness, and get this all the time, and I'm sure you resonate with it. It's like, I don't like to meditate. Well, then don't meditate.
Correct.
Do something else, and you might come back to it, but there are a million different things you can do for your mind, to train your mind to work for you, and not have to feel like it's such a grind. Kind of defeats the whole purpose of the mental fitness and mindfulness and just well-being in general when your meditation practice is stressing you out because you're trying to keep a streak or whatever it is, right?
You and I have been doing this work for a long time, and I know your story, but I'd love to hear how you came to this work. And I also want to hear, Marc, do you remember specific experiences where you went, ooh, I'm going a little bit overboard, and how have you managed that?
I came to this work out of necessity in the sense that I spent about a decade in the healthcare space, in the corporate world, and I wasn't calling it mental fitness at that time, but I had a reflective practice that showed up as journaling and is still, I would say, the core practice from all of my routines and so forth. And I was just doing that for years, and there just wasn't anything that was available for, at that time, for guiding people into a journaling practice through big questions, because that's what I was experiencing through my study of just great thinkers. We launched that. It was an app. We reached a bunch of people, nearly 90 million people in the first couple of years. And despite reaching that a number of people, the business model wasn't working and we had to shut it down. And in that moment, Leah, is where I, for the first time in my life, felt hopeless, because I had no path forward. I had no strategy to get myself out of the situation. It was just, wow, I just spent 3 years building this business and this app with the team, and we had all of these aspirations and desires, and we could see we were helping people just based on the comments coming back. And within a second of, looking at my computer, I hit delete. It was gone, gone, just completely wiped out. And now what? Because I was working in the health space prior in the corporate world, and I was working in mental health as well. So I knew the signs of depression. I'd never been in a depression prior to that, but I could see where I was going. And I was going into a deep kind of dark place. And it was a combination of, okay, this is not ending well if I don't do something, and I have to make my full-time job at this point my mind.
I do think that a lot of people get to this work from a place of necessity, as you mentioned. I almost think it's like a rite of passage in some ways in this work, that you come to it because for whatever reason, you're saying to yourself, there has to be a better way. And you don't know what that way is, but this ends up being the path you take, is this exploration of the work of personal development, the work of understanding more about yourself and the human experience and others and what the greats have done, and how you can use your mind and your body in a way to actually work for you, and how you can feel more empowered within your mind. Because I think actually, of all the things that can make us feel disempowered, it's our minds. And when I say mind, I don't mean brain. I mean the software that exists in our minds, that is a combination of all of the experiences we've had, many of which in childhood, that have programmed us in a specific way, and the belief that that's the only way to look at the world, and that we don't have control over that perspective. So I think it gets to a point where you go, God, there has to be a better way, because this software needs an upgrade and I can't keep working with what I have. So I definitely relate to your story that I got here because I found myself in a place where I was like, oh, I'm also sliding down. And I had never been in a depression, but I felt like the circumstances around me, the work I was doing, the place I was living, I mean, all of it, my mindset, everything could have led me to a place where I would have to be dealing with my own mental health in a different way than just being able to sort of get up and meditate and journal and all those things. I felt like it would have been a little more intense.
What were those signs for you, though, in that moment?
When I first started work, I've never been much of a student. I loved learning, but for whatever reason, school wasn't it, but work has always been something that's so exciting. When I first started working, I would jump out of bed and I would be the only person I knew who was dancing and getting excited to get to work and turning on music and all these things and really excited to face the day. And I didn't feel that. I didn't want to get out of bed and dance around. I didn't love my work. Not everyone feels this way, but for me, that's key. Things like just that extra moment when you're sitting down and you should work out. And it's not the moment where you're I don't feel like it. It's the a little bit more that feels a little bit heavier. That's ooh, okay, something's a little bit different here. And also just noticing how I related to others. So I was noticing that I wasn't my normal, joyful, kind of more buoyant self.
Sure.
I felt heavier. I felt like I wasn't leaving people better than I found them. I think I was more of an energy drain than someone who was at least coming and leaving with energy that felt restorative or loving or calm or kind.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, because I think it's so easy for us to fall into autopilot and miss all of those cues. I mean, and many of
Mm-hmm.
what you shared, I can relate to directly, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are there as well, right? And it's not, I mean, I would invite everyone to not view that from a place of judgment or self-judgment, but just gathering data, right? And then we have
That's
we
it.
have the opportunity to make some subtle changes, and it doesn't have to be all today, but
Mm-hmm.
just, okay, well, here are some things that are a bit off. So maybe spending a bit of time quieting the mind, and whether, again, there are a million different practices, whether that's pen to paper or just taking time to think, right? Often at least starts to surface, some paths forward.
What are some of your favorite sort of techniques and tools that helped you get through that difficult time? Because I think that's what happens is you have this difficult experience, you realize there has to be a better way. If you are resourceful and curious, you will go searching for that better way. Something will work for you, hopefully. And then I think similar for both of us, then you go real deep into it. So what happened with the something that worked for you? What were those tools?
I think that the main thing was really prioritizing my mental and internal environment. And what I mean by that is ensuring that whatever was coming in was what I needed in that moment. And in those moments, when I was in my lowest of the lows, I had to surround myself with what I would call mentors from afar. And I didn't know a lot of those individuals. And they shift. I still have these people in my life, but I needed the playlist of motivation. I needed the experts of, okay, really realigning and making sure I'm on purpose, or that I'm following the path that feels more right for me. And it's just curating that playlist for your mind versus just, letting yourself go into autopilot. And then all of a sudden, all you're consuming is kind of fear-based content, right? Or anxiety provoking or content and depressive thoughts and whatnot. I mean, it's just, I wish this wasn't the case, but if we just do nothing, well, I mean, we know where that leads. We see the statistics globally. I mean, we're in a mental health crisis right now. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to do something, right? We have to do something. And for me, it was just curating, just like the physical environment. If we think of food as well, making sure that if your home is stocked well with just good quality food, you're much more likely to just eat more nutritiously, right? Same thing. What is your mental nutrition? And don't make it so grandiose. What is it for this week? Like, what do I need this week? And then you can expand out for, the year or the month or whatever it is. But let's just make it manageable for, this week I'm going to focus here. And that's enough. That is enough. And you're almost guaranteed to feel better knowing that you're curating that kind of content because you know what you're putting into your mind.
What was some of the content you curated?
At that time, I needed hits of inspiration around trusting the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that people, like, you hear the stories all the time, they've hit rock bottom and, that was the big moment, or there was a shift and so forth. I knew all of that, but I needed reminders of that because I think the science is something to the effect of you need 3 positives to counterbalance 1 negative. So again, if you go into the philosophy of we're just getting hit with negativity all day.
And we have negativity bias, right? So it's like your mind
Exactly.
is already programmed to look for the negative so that it can keep you safe from the outside world.
Exactly.
I mean, living in New York, I go, God, yeah, I'm hyper vigilant about some of the negative. I can spot like a bird pooping, I'm
Yeah,
like, am I under it?
exactly. Shift right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So at that time, it was very much just reinforcing and reminding my mind of those stories. So there was a lot of Mel Robbins, Rich Roll, Lewis Howes, like usual suspects in those arenas that I know that they're bringing on guests speaking of those stories as
Mm-hmm.
well. And it's always seasons. Like right now, I'm really focused on just letting some of this stuff go, and just sitting in more stillness. So with that in mind, just being intentional with what I'm going to be reading, this week, for example, is around stilling the mind and slowing down and just helping me get back to that place and so forth, right? And then, next month might be something different based on what's going on. But I think like that's been the big realization, because just the idea of seasons and figuring out what season we're in, and you can time align these as well nicely with nature, of course, but just thinking, am I in a full-on expansion mode? Do I need some time in silence? Because we do need all those seasons. Like, we can't put our minds through a 12 to 14 hour high intensity workout day in and day out without any recovery. Like, it just doesn't work, right?
I like your point about the seasons. I think that for me is like the biggest one, where I know I can check in and go, where am I? And so it's like you talk to any performance coach or performance psychologist, there are cycles of, rest, recovery, bloom, or training, and then game day. And you just go through those cycles over and over again. But nobody can just stay in training and game day forever. It's not realistic, right? And so it's like, how do we start to identify better where you are needing to add in some form of rest, some form of recovery, and also trusting that it will come back to the point that you already perform at, if not higher. Because I think sometimes with overachieving, or with people who are very, into their work, you can almost feel that like stopping feels like an ending. Stopping might mean you never come back, you never bounce back. But the reality is, no, resting allows you to recover, and then you come back better.
Yeah. But I think you have to, I love that. And I love the physical analogy. And I think what works in those situations is that there's pretty strict planning. And that's where this is the stuff that excites me the most when on the professional side, working with teams, 'cause it's, if you can look at, and you can do this individually, if you can look at the next quarter, and, whether that's you're working on a product launch or strategy, like whatever it is, taking a look at the big milestones that you have and knowing that, okay, I've got to go kind of all out here. But right now, while I'm not in that, what can I pre-plant into the schedule that has some rest and recovery built in there? And it's a non-negotiable, right? And you make that commitment to yourself now. And if even better, if you do this as a team and you're sitting down and like, okay, just like you plan out the tactics to support the brand strategy. Okay, we're going to do these things, but we're also going to integrate some rest and recovery here. And what does that look like? And, there's individual, but there's also team stuff that could be as simple as, building in some mental fitness to your status calls. Start the project status calls with 5 or 10 minutes of some breath work and just checking in as a group. What's coming up for you? It doesn't have to be these giant, you don't have to go and book a corporate offsite to do this, is my point, right? Great. Like, if you want to do that, great. And I'll be there. But I'm talking about the micro moments, right? Because those things stack and they're exponential.
Before we go on break, let's recap. There are seasons to when it's time to amp up your mental nutrition. Maybe something at work is going to need more of you than you've ever had to give. Perhaps you're dealing with a personal transition. As Marc says, curate a simple mental nutrition plan and focus on what's manageable and only what you need for the next week. We'll be back in just a few moments. And we're back with Marc Champagne. We both are steeped in this work all the time. And I believe our listeners obviously take the work of personal development, the work of understanding more about yourself, building self-awareness through mental fitness, through emotional intelligence, through physical fitness, all of these things. I think most of our listeners take that very seriously and are at least interested, if not already very much in that space and kind of on the path. And while I think it is absolutely incredible and the work of our lives, I truly do, I also believe that there is a tipping point where it goes too far. No matter what, if you are applying the idea of performance, of pressure, of, doing something really well to any of those areas of your life, it actually may not make you more well. It may make you even more anxious, even more stressed, even more worried about whether or not you're doing it right.
Have you tried taking a mini sabbatical in personal development?
Well, I had, so I promised myself I wouldn't buy any more Audible books and I wouldn't buy any more physical books. That tends to be the area where I go really deep, and I've had to temper, like, I'm not reading all of this book right now. I'm going to shift
Yeah.
how I relate to this information. So my sabbatical has kind of started, but I don't know that I can go on a complete one, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and for sure. And I asked that question from someone that hasn't completely gone on one either. But I find, at least for me, what's been helpful is releasing the pressure of I have to finish all of these books.
Mm-hmm.
And just actually skipping to sections that I feel are at least most appropriate for where I'm at or what season I'm in, and making that okay or that enough.
Mm-hmm.
And now find myself, maybe in a few months coming back to that same book and jumping in somewhere else. And it seems subtle, but it feels so much lighter in that sense.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And I think just giving ourselves, some space to just, maybe this week I'm not going to consume, and just taking a bit of a break and letting that sit and asking some bigger open-ended questions around, what am I hearing? Like what am I pretending not to know? Or what's coming up for me? Just like some check-in questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's always amazing when we let our minds breathe a little bit, what starts to surface. And it's hard for that stuff to surface if we're just continually, and this is where I think you and I were guilty of this and why we're having this episode, but to just continually stuff our minds just like it was a physical room. It's like we're just loading the spare room with boxes of valuable things. But then at one point, someone's like, hey, can you go get that thing over there? I'm like, yeah, it's in there, but I have to empty out the entire room to get it.
Yeah.
Right? Which I'll get it, but it's going to be annoying and frustrating. It's going to take time. And I feel like our minds have turned into that.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't see it. The alternate version of that is a beautiful library.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of information in there, but it's organized and it's, you can retrieve it fast and keep the aisles clear kind of thing. And I think we can all do that. And that's where if we find 3 to 5 rituals or practices that feels good for us, maybe it's the long walk, and just make sure those things are naturally woven into the schedule, doesn't feel forced, then we're, subtly cleaning the mind every week.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't become a thing.
Yeah, I relate this a lot to the idea of people who are overachievers too, because I think whether it's personal development or something else, all of us who are overachievers tend to overfill, right? Because we're trying so hard to, I think ultimately get to the point where we think we're enough. The reason I try to overachieve is because I want to be seen as and to feel like I'm enough. And so when is it enough is a question that's hard for an overachiever, I think, to answer because we feel like it's never enough. We have to keep going in whatever area we're in. And that is what I think ultimately leads to burnout. I just think the irony of the kind of sabbatical we're talking about is the whole field of personal development is to help make yourself better. It's not to burn you out.
Yeah. And I feel like we hear that question posed in all other circumstances of life. It's like, when is it enough money? When is it enough success? When is it enough this? But I've rarely, or feel like I haven't heard a conversation around when it comes to our development and so forth, because it just feels like a strange question to answer or ask, given, there are so many benefits of growing and evolving and so forth. Why and when did you first ask that question? And how have you been thinking about self-regulating a little bit more when it comes to self-development?
The what is enough question has been one that I've been thinking about probably for like 4 years. Actually, it came out of a training I did. I was certified in the Enneagram. And for those of you who don't know what the Enneagram is, it is a personality typing system that is one of the most powerful things I have ever worked with. It shares essentially what your core motivators are and then how to grow. I learned something about my type that I resonate most with, my core type, which is type 7, that gluttony is something that we are prone to. And gluttony in anything, essentially the 7 believes more is better. And I went, oh, God. I laughed when I heard it and I went, oh, God.
Yeah.
And so more is better can go all sorts of ways. And as most of us know, moderation is typically the best way forward in anything, especially when you're in it for the long haul. So, I found that I was asking that question of myself with everything. How much is enough money to make? How much is enough to have in the fridge? Especially after COVID, I found myself becoming one of those people who was like, oh, the hoarder I never thought I'd become. I'm like, why do I have, all of this kale? Like, did I really need it? Somebody else needed it. And so I was asking those kind of questions, kind of being silly, but then also being very serious. And I found myself at a point where, like, I've burned out twice in my career. And I can typically tell when it's coming, but sometimes I let it go really far until I get to that point because I'm just like wanting to work. I felt that burnout coming in this work. So I am someone who, if you tell me about an audiobook and I'm interested, I'm buying it now. And I'll probably start it tonight, and I'll have it alongside my 7 other audiobooks that are going, and I'm reading a book that's on my nightstand. That's actually like I look at that as a huge strength. Like, I can take in a lot of information. And it's part of how I feel like I made myself dangerous enough to be in the role I'm in today, because I was, when I got into this work, I was like, oh, I have to know more and I want to know more and I've got to go deep, and I'm so happy to do it. And I will take, much of my precious time to really sit and learn. But that was a season. For me, that was the season of becoming, moving into the career I'm in now and becoming the person I've become now. That had to happen. What I found is I never turned the spigot off. I never turned the water off, so it was like, I continued to buy audiobooks. I continued to keep doing all this stuff. And then it tipped into a point where I felt like I became a problem looking for a solution everywhere. It was like whack-a-mole. Because when it comes to personal development, the whole point of this work is to become better so that you can support your corner of the world and you can change it. And so that is really powerful stuff. But I was finding that I was constantly, I could hear a thing and go, oh, maybe that's something I should be working on. Oh, maybe that's something I should be working on.
Yeah.
And so I felt this sense of overwhelm, this oncoming burnout of like, I'm actually not really living anymore. I'm just taking all this information in and trying to fix so many problems that I can't even necessarily say are real. And so all I felt in my body, I was like, I got to stop. Like, I got to scale back. So that's how I kind of got here, was all of those things. And then realizing that I had a desire for way more simplicity and going, if I could just do 2 things in a day, what would it be? If I could listen to 1 book all year, what would I listen to?
I like that.
Yeah.
This week, I read an article in Monocle magazine, and I wrote this down. It was exactly around this topic, kind of like be all you can be. And also, though, just accept the present and live.
Chill.
Yeah,
Chill out.
exactly. Which
Yeah.
feel like those are extremes. I think we're always trying to find the balance, and the scale may tip one way more one month and the other way the next month, and I think that's okay. I think giving ourselves the permission that it's okay, but we have to check in. And this is kind of the strategist in me coming out. It's the same thing with a business. If you're not looking at your metrics and checking in with the business, then all of a sudden you get to this point where, like, oh, so we've run out of money. So something happened along the way here that has led to this, right? But for whatever reason, we don't do those kind of check-ins for ourselves and our minds around, well, how do I feel today? Like, what's one word to describe how my mind feels? And if it feels anxious, and well, where do you feel that in your body? And so what's fueling that? I mean, this takes minutes, sometimes less than a minute. But those emotions are coming into the day with us, whether we like it or not. And at least if we can just slow down and check in, then we can start to understand, okay, well, I'm seeing some patterns here. And you mentioned this about how you were noticing this with yourself as well, right? Like, you weren't super excited to like run into work, and just lost, I guess, some of that drive as well for exercise and whatnot. So we have to check in to get that data. And then with that, we can empower ourselves to take some subtle edits in the path or on the path.
What I love about hearing you talk about our work, and I won't say mine's completely opposite, but it's like I got to this because I wanted to look at how people live a meaningful life.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And to really explore the human experience and our agency within it, right? The ways in which we can put ourselves in the way of a meaningful life versus hoping it happens to us. Yours is much more like every day, in any moment, you can come back to practices that do put you in the way of a meaningful life, but the value of them is that they're simple, short, sweet, and potentially daily, right? So it's sort of like the blend of how do you do this at a larger scale, but then how do you show up every day to do this? Because that's what compounds to lead to a meaningful life, right? It's like you can't just know that gratitude is one of the most powerful exercises you can do for your brain and, not plot out when you're going to do it, right? And how you're going to make it happen and how you do it quickly. And I mean, that was one of the practices that I picked up as we're talking about some of the ways that we decided what's a non-negotiable and what's not as far as development. Like mine is my 5-minute journal, and in that journal, I have to write three points of gratitude, what would make the day great, one affirmation, and then I have to look at the end of the day and say, what did make the day great? How was this day magic?
Yeah.
I heard someone say the other day when they wake up, it was an entrepreneur, I forget who it was, but he said, every day I wake up and I say something magical is going to happen today. I was like, I love that. And then at the end of the day, you go, well, what was it, right? So that's one of the practices that I found that was really powerful that I will probably use forever, right? It's a non-negotiable. For me, meditation of some kind is a non-negotiable every day. And the other that I know for sure is 30 minutes of some sort of exercise, even if it's just a nice walk, is a non-negotiable. I'm curious, what are your must-haves that you would recommend people try out, even if it's not the thing that works perfectly for them?
Yeah. So my non-negotiable, and this hasn't always been a non-negotiable, this came from the podcast and listening to others and so forth. So there's always beautiful opportunities to just try new things. And for me, it was guided breath work. It looks different every day. Sometimes it's a little bit longer, sometimes it's shorter. But what is the non-negotiable is even if I wake up and let's say the sleep was off, I've got young children, so sometimes they really mess with that sleep schedule. The thing I'm 100% doing is at least 2 minutes of guided breath work, which sounds so insignificant, but the benefits, at least for me, are just in starting the day with those 2 minutes, I feel like I've started the day on my own terms versus when I don't do that, I'm starting in this like survivor mode right?
Yeah.
And you're just playing catch up all day. So it's 2 minutes, but it completely reframes the entire day. So for me, it's breathing. And then for sure, my journaling practice has evolved to just be, there are staple moments, kind of like you at the beginning and the end, but I just kind of use it when needed at this point as well. If something comes up middle of the day, I'm not going to let the mind stew and spin. I'm just going to take a few seconds and write that out or leave myself an audio note or take a walk and just think and process and let that go within minutes so it doesn't hijack the rest of my day.
All right, Marc, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions because I want to know a few things about what's going on for you right now. And I want people to get some of your expertise. You wrote a book called Personal Socrates, and we talked about that a while ago, about questions to ask ourselves. What's a question you think everyone could ask themselves right now?
Oh, love it. This is always so hard because, as you know, I curate and collect questions. So there are thousands of them circulating around. But the one that is intuitively surfacing right now is, what am I really hearing in this moment? What is my higher self telling me right now? The way I frame this is the version of me that is 80 plus years old and has lived a lot of life and has soaked up a lot of wisdom. What is that person telling me right now?
Ooh, I like that. What do you wish you knew about mental fitness before you started?
I wish I knew how accessible it was, because I had judgment on, not even mental fitness, because that term didn't exist, but I had judgment on these practices, sound healing, breath work.
Yes.
Breath work? What are you talking about?
You're insane.
Where's that? Yeah, where's that coming from? Cue up the robe and beads, which nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
And the white linen.
Exactly, right? So I guess I'd refine the answer to say, I wish I had less judgment around mental fitness and just approached it wide open, because I feel like it'd be even farther down the road.
What do you wish you could tell every skeptic about mental fitness or personal development?
Kind of a bold statement, but like, what do you have to lose? What's the downside in trying something like this? And here's where I may ruffle some feathers, but is what you're doing working?
How's that working for you? Yeah, I love that. I thought of that too.
Yeah. And I feel like we can ask that question in so many different areas, not just within our personal lives, but just in big systems and professional life and work and whatnot. Because we get so hung up on ideas and ways of doing things and whatnot. If we just take a minute and a couple breaths and zoom out, like, well, is that working for us? Like, often the answer is no. Well, then at least we can try some different approaches.
And what mistakes have you made in mental fitness?
I think it's just going too hard on mental fitness and getting wrapped up in, so these are the limiting beliefs, so I can't stay stuck on the limiting beliefs because what I think about comes about, and just getting stuck in these loops of, I'm sabotaging myself right now. I realize that, but just slow down, take a breath. I mean, there's validity to a lot of this stuff, but sometimes you just need to live.
Yes.
And just be,
Oof.
right? Just be. That's the intention for the season moving forward. Let's just be, at least for me.
I agree. It's the reason I think we're having this conversation is because it's like, what's the point of all this work if you're not just going out and living? What's the point of all of this if you aren't just experiencing life? And you don't have to be, equipped with every single tool and every single piece of information and the ability to psychoanalyze everyone in your life, including yourself, at any moment so that you can understand things deeper. It's like, it's just not that deep sometimes. If you just go out and live. I remember I talked to Deepak Chopra months ago, and he wrote a new book called Quantum Body. And I said, what do you think people would do differently if they knew what you know? And he, in essence, said they would live so lightly. They would laugh. They would have humor. It just wouldn't be that serious, was kind of his point. And I was like, how funny and how ironic in this world, in this space, that's what someone who's been doing this work his whole life would say.
Yeah.
All right. So, Marc, I'm going to have you complete these 3 statements for me. Better humans are...
connected.
Better work is...
better work is lighter.
And a better world has...
more love.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Can I ask you one final rapid fire?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. For Leah, in the season that you're in right now, what feelings do you want to be celebrating at the end of that season?
I want to be celebrating buoyancy. Like, that word came up for me today. I haven't used it ever, but yeah, buoyance. I want to be feeling buoyant. I want to be feeling easy. That feeling of just kind of floating along. It's all good.
I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Buoyancy, lighter. Looks like there's some themes in this one.
Yeah, exactly. More to talk about. Marc, thank you for being here today. I love getting to just jam with you and see where we go. So thanks for playing along.
Oh, right back at you.
That was Marc Champagne, mental fitness expert and author of the book Personal Socrates, questions that will upgrade your life from legends and world-class performers. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with the first person who comes to mind. You never know how it could help them out. And support other people like you in finding our show by leaving us a rating before you go. While you're at it, write a 1-sentence review telling me and the team what you love about Everyday Better. And as always, you can get me in your inbox by signing up for our weekly personal development newsletter, giving you practical tips on how to level up with small steps every day. Find it in our show notes for this episode or at linkedin.com/everydaybetter. That's linkedin.com/everydaybetter. Everyday Better is a production of LinkedIn News. The show is produced by Grace Rubin and Emily Reeves. Asaf Gadron is our sound engineer. He makes sure we sound good in the studio. Joe DeGiorgi mixed our show. Enrique Montalvo is the executive producer of LinkedIn Editorial Productions. Dave Pond is head of news production. Courtney Coop is head of LinkedIn Original Audio and Video. Dan Roth is the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. And I'm Leah Smart. Thanks for coming with me, and I'll see you next week.